Welcome back to Tell by Bell. I'm your host, Bella Wee. In Season 2, I'm excited to share some of the most interesting stories we can learn from poems. This season, I'll be reciting and deciphering poems. So I hope you're ready to listen with full attention because attention roots retention. After a 2-week break, I'd like to continue with our poetry reading. This time, it's dedicated to all Year 6 pupils of local schools in Malaysia who own the book Anthology of Poems. Altogether, there'll be 10 poems, spanning 5 episodes. Today's episode is all about, messing about. Now, who doesn't love to mess around and have a bit of fun? And that's exactly what our poem today is about. It's a delightful little rhyme called Messing About by the ever-brilliant Michael Rosen. So let's start with a quick reading of the poem itself, shall we?
Do you know what? Said Jumping John. I had a belly ache, and now it's gone.
Do you know what? Said Kicking Kirsty.
All this jumping has made me thirsty.
Do you know what? Said Mad Mickey.
I sat in glue and I feel all sticky.
Do you know what?
Said Fat Fred.
You can't see me. I'm under the bed.
Isn't that fun? I can almost picture these characters just bouncing around, getting into all sorts of silly situations. Michael Rosen's poetry feels so alive. His words have this energetic, mischievous quality that brings back memories of being a kid, when every moment was an adventure and even the silliest things could spark joy. Now, let's talk about the characters for a second. Each one has their own little quirk, don't they? You've got Jumping John, Kicking Kirsty, Mad Mickey, and Fat Fred. They're like a squad of playful, carefree kids just having a laugh. And let's be honest, who hasn't been a little like one of these characters at some point? Take Jumping John, for example. He's that kid who's always so full of energy, constantly bouncing around until, surprise, his bellyache disappears. I think we all know a Jumping John in our lives, don't we? That friend who's always moving and somehow feels better after they've been active. And then there's Kicking Kirsty, who's clearly been joining in the fun, but now needs a drink. It's such a simple observation, but it reminds us that even when you're having the time of your life, there's always that moment when reality kicks in. Quite literally in this case, and you realize, hey, I'm thirsty. Oh wait, I am thirsty. Let me just take a sip of water I have here. Alright, feeling better. Mad Mickey though, he's the one who got himself into a sticky situation. Quite literally. Sitting in glue. I mean, that's like every parent's nightmare. But every child's adventure. I can just imagine the laughter and the struggle of trying to unstick yourself. But secretly, you're loving every second of it. And finally, there's Fat Fred. Hiding under the bed. The sneaky one. The one who's trying to avoid being seen. Maybe even plotting his next bit of mischief. It's such a great closing line because haven't we all hidden under a bed at some point, either during hide and seek or maybe even to avoid cleaning up some mess we've made? I think this poem captures something so essential about childhood, the fun of just being in a moment, of making messes, getting thirsty, feeling sticky, and even hiding away. It's a reminder that sometimes life is best when we're just messing about, not worrying too much about what's next. Now, let's take a look at this poem from a creative perspective. Michael Rosen is known for his conversational style of writing, and Messing About is a perfect example of how he uses everyday speech to create poetry that feels real and relatable. The repetition of "do you know what?" creates this casual, almost conspirational tone as if each character is sharing a little secret with us. And that's the beauty of simplicity in poetry. It doesn't have to be complex to be meaningful or enjoyable. Sometimes the most powerful poems are the ones that take us back to a simple, happy memory or remind us of what it feels like to be carefree. So, if you ever find yourself stuck for creative inspiration, remember this poem. Think about those small moments in life. The bellyaches that go away, the thirst that hits you after playing, or even the glue you accidentally set in. And write about them. It's in those everyday experiences that we often find the most joy. Now, our next poem is The Sandwich by Tony Bradman. If you're feeling a bit hungry, this one might just make your mouth water or leave you scratching your head. Let me read it for you.
Oh, what shall I have today for my tea? I know, a big sandwich, as big as can be. I'll start with the bread, 2 slices quite large. Then slap on some jam, oh yes, and some march. I'll put in some cheese, a tomato or 2, and maybe an onion, this big one will do. I'll bung in some lettuce, a radish of course, and a sizzling burger, all covered in sauce. Add in some chicken and maybe some chips, some biscuits, an apple, a packet of crisps, a cake with some candles, some chocolate, 1 bar, spaghetti bananas, sweets from a jar, baked beans and humbugs, carrots and mustard, all top of whipped cream and steaming hot custard. Now, a sandwich like that you really can't beat. It's packed out with goodies, a real tasty treat. There's only one problem. It's breaking my heart. It's such a big sandwich. Where do I start?
Now that is what I call a big sandwich. Tony Bradman really took things to the next level with this one. I mean, we've all had moments where we've wanted to make a really big sandwich, but I don't think any of us have gone as far as adding spaghetti, humbugs, or even a cake with candles. This sandwich is a true monstrosity of deliciousness, or chaos, depending on how you see it. What I love about this poem is how it perfectly captures the feeling of letting your imagination run wild. The poet starts out with something simple, bread, cheese, maybe a tomato, and then it just gets wilder and wilder, piling on all these absurd ingredients. By the time you get to baked beans and hot custard, you can't help but laugh. It reminds me of how, as kids, we sometimes throw together the most ridiculous food combinations. Because why not? Maybe you've tried dipping chips into ice cream, or mixing different kinds of sweets in one bowl, just to see what happens. This poem really taps into that sense of playful experimentation. The real magic, though, is in the ending. After building this mountain of a sandwich, the poet is left with a dilemma. Where do I start? It's such a simple yet relatable problem, isn't it? Sometimes we have some grand ideas, whether it's about food or anything else in life. But when it comes to actually diving in, we're left wondering how to begin. Let's talk about the structure of this poem for a moment. Tony Bradman uses rhyme to create a rhythmic flow that mirrors the way the sandwich itself is being built, piece by piece. Each couplet adds another layer to this towering creation, and before you know it, the sandwich has spiraled out of control. It's almost like a snowball effect. The ingredients just keep rolling in until it's bigger than the poet can't handle. And let's not forget the humor. From sizzling burger to spaghetti and steaming hot custard, Bradman throws in ingredients that would never make sense together in real life. But that's what makes it so entertaining. It's that sense of whimsy and absurdity that keeps us reading just to see what he'll add next. Now, here's something fun you can try after hearing this poem. Why not create your own imaginary sandwich? What wild, wacky ingredients would you throw in? Maybe you'll start with the basics. Bread, cheese, lettuce, but then go completely off the rails. Throw in something unexpected, like sushi, marshmallows, or even a pizza slice. The crazier, the better. And who knows, maybe you'll come up with a sandwich that's too good not to try in real life. Just maybe skip the custard. The poem also makes me think about how we often bite off more than we can chew, literally and figuratively. Sometimes we pile on too many tasks, ideas, or expectations, just like this sandwich. And then we're left wondering, where do I start? It's a reminder that as fun as it is to dream big, we also need to figure out how to start small and take one bite at a time. So, what's the main takeaway from the sandwich? Well, maybe it's that life is a lot like this poem. It's messy, it's unpredictable, and sometimes we end up with a little too much on our plate. Or in this case, between two slices of bread. But at the end of the day, it's the fun of creating and imagining that makes it all worthwhile. And hey, if you ever get stuck, just take a deep breath and start with the first bite. That's all for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed our two playful poems today. Messing About by Michael Rosen and The Sandwich by Tony Bradman. If you have any fun childhood memories or wild sandwich ideas, feel free to share them with me. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out our next episode, where we'll be exploring more delightful poems. Until then, keep imagining, keep playing, and maybe, just maybe, try making a somewhat extraordinary sandwich. This is Belle Wee, signing off. See you next time on Till Bye Belle.